We're on Point Siena. This is 20 years ago. So we get this call that there's a lot of activity in this house. So I show up with a friend of mine. We sit down. She and I sit down with the family in the front room by the kitchen, and we're talking. And while we're talking about what's going on, I hear like the news or the TV's going down the hall. So who's in that room? They say that's the ghost. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm like, sure.
Love to go in there.
Love to go in there. I was like, hang on just a minute. I'm going to go check something out. And as I'm walking, it sounds like the evening news, starts sounding like water dribbling. And when I walk into the bedroom and look around the corner, there's a big 100-gallon fish tank, and it's evaporated down about 3 inches on the top, and there's fish in it. And the filter is bubbling because it needs to, so it's like blah, 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 blah. It's sounding like voice. So I walk back down in the hall, and it sounds like voice. Over here sounds like water. So I kind of get in between the two, and I stick my recorder down there, and I turn it on, and I walk away, and we're all sitting there like this. And I said, hey, is there anybody in the house that wants to talk to us? I take the recorder off, and now I can play it, and I can raise and lower the amplitude and all this kind of stuff. It's babbling. And then it goes, I just can't stop the seizure.
Come out from the past, living in the future I created. Now, own an air minute, I'm in at a G. My NFT drop, you with that energy, stop. At all costs, I will protect funeral line the effect from the blast that I emit. I don't miss. I'm unfolding. Rise up, king. I'd rather build or destroy.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Joe Pavich Podcast. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Above and Beyond Painting, First Source Title, Edwards Contracting Group, and got an exciting guest today. Very excited. This is going to be my first Halloween special. Mm-hmm. Got to do something fun for Halloween. Got my guest Lee Ehrlich here today. Lee is a paranormal investigator, author of a book which I have here today, Master of the Abyss. Awesome read if you haven't read it. You need to. And this is almost going to be like campfire scary stories in the Joe Pavich Podcast.
Yeah, why not?
So, Lee, thanks for coming today, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's nice to just relax and just take the time to talk about some experiences and share stuff with y'all. And yeah, that's what I love most about this.
It's great, man. Well, I'm in real estate, so there's about 14,000 realtors in town, mm-hmm. and your career is the opposite of that. I think there's only a handful, mm-hmm. if right. that, of paranormal investigators. So, I saw you online. I saw a story on the news, and I had followed you, and I thought, I got to get a hold of this guy and get him in here. So. Yeah. Just a pleasure, man. I mean, this is great for me because I've always loved the paranormal. I would say I'd never really had a couple experiences, nothing crazy. We'll talk about that today. But to just have somebody in here with me today to just go through some of these facts and things I've saw and learned and movies and some of the things you see.
Yeah.
Kind of what's real and what's not,
Well, I'll tell you, your background and mine are similar in a lot of ways. I'm a real estate investor myself. And what ended up happening with me years back when I first got into all of this is I started realizing that myself, realtors, people in different trades, all sort of chew the same dirt, so to speak. For example, we're in a lot of abandoned homes. We're in a lot of old buildings.
Yeah.
I'm walking around kicking through the catacombs, so to speak, of a building I may be interested in purchasing.
Sure.
But what I'll do is instead of wearing one hat, I'll wear many because sometimes things come out of the woodwork, so to speak, that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
And so what really kind of turned me on to a lot of this was that I was having experiences while I was doing something else.
Wow. And
my compadres that would be with me doing all of this, I'd say to them, did you experience that? Did you hear? They sounded like one of you guys was down the hall, but they're not there. And it happened over and over again, where it would be like that, summertime, it's dusk, there's a fresh listing you got to go check out. You're walking it around, you can hear each footstep crumbling because there's broken glass, all these things, and then something happens, and you're all like, what the hell was that?
What was that?
What
Yeah.
was that? So as an entrepreneur, as an antique collector, as an antique and custom car collector, boat collector, all these things that I do, I'm chewing through the same dirt as a paranormal investigator, and all I have to do is turn that radio dial just once, and I can flip from station to station.
Wow.
So that's what I do.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. I love it. I've always wondered about this. So say you're with someone, right, and maybe they don't see the signs and notice the things. Maybe they're not open to that world, right? Could two people go in somewhere and one notice it and one not?
Oh, without question. And that's what I think is so great, is that there's so much room for improvement, so to speak. Sometimes people wouldn't know something if it hit them over the head. They just wouldn't know that. For instance, I'll say a lot of times, like I'll have a recording of a room, and I'll say, "What's that?" I'll say this to the person after we listen to it. "What's that?" And they'll say, "I don't know." I said, "No. What's that voice in the background?" And they're like, "I didn't hear anything." I said, "Stop. Yes, you did. You did hear something, but you're not paying attention." It's like if you were in the country, you'd end up getting shot. If you were a part of any type of a team, out in the wild, because you're not aware. There's no perception.
Yeah.
And some people who've never had an experience, they just are so closed off that sometimes you can't even bring them investigating with you because there's such a downer. Well, that's this, and well, that's this, and well, that's this. And I'm like, no, you've got 3 separate voice tracks on a line, different tone, intonation, different everything. Who is that? And they're like, oh, well, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sums it up.
So when you bring someone with you that's obviously open-minded, that changes the whole experience.
Whole experience. Yeah. Now, granted, it's great that you mentioned this. One of the downfalls, and of course everything has a downfall, is that you've got the flip side. You've got the person for whom, everything is a paranormal experience. It's like, it's not paranormal.
Sure.
It's just not, and they're, oh, I love these things we get. There'll be a reflection. There's orbs. There's this, there's that. It's like, stop. I can replicate all these things with your camera in 5 minutes. It's a moisture orb. You go to Gettysburg, and there's a bunch of gravestones there, and they heat up during the day. They're granite, and they heat up like a little solar panel. So now they're hot. So they're hot throughout the whole day, charged up. And then in the evening, when the dew point comes up, all of the heat's rising on top of above these statues into the atmosphere, and it's dragging the ambient moisture out of the ground in droplets. They appear on top of this grave as on their way up to becoming rain.
Yeah.
And if you illuminate them, you see an orb like this. And then people are like, oh, that's Elvis's, whatever.
Yeah.
And so then it turns into, oh, I see a face in the orb and he's smiling. It's my great-great-grandfather, Bob. And I'm looking at him like, I think objectivity flew out the window like 8 sentences ago.
That's amazing to hear that, because it's something you never think of. I was recently in Charleston, and we like to do the tours.
Yeah.
We like to get freaked out.
Fun.
Family. Yeah. And the kids like that stuff too. And you go on the little tours. And that's what they were doing. The graveyard, there was a little one of those, and I kind of wondered, is this real?
Yeah, it's real.
It could be real, but
yeah, it's real evidence that there is a dew point and all of that.
Yeah.
There's a switch over, but no, it's not. But it's interesting, and also too, you never know what you're going to get, because the thing is, you could be shooting a camera over here and something will appear over here. You're not. It's always out of left field. That kind of thing. So is it hurting anything to say, well, I'm going to take some more pictures? Nah, I mean, if it makes you happy.
Yeah.
If you want to have a box full of orb pictures, that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's every once in a while, there's that one anomaly where you're like, you just don't know. Like we were in a house in Alva, way back in the country. And there was a guy that seemed whacked out of his mind, but he kept telling us all these things. So it was kind of a lull in the season. We hadn't been out in the field in a few weeks, so I'm like, let's check this guy out and see what he's got, because right now things are stagnant as hell.
Sure.
So out we go. The guy's batty as a fruitcake, but fascinatingly interesting at the same time. And he's seeing things that make no sense. So he said, all right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to walk around the house. Let me just take some pictures and this and that. So he shoot and shot, two shots everywhere, flash, non-flash, all these things, daytime. And when we're reviewing the pictures, a good friend of mine who was on the team with me, she's like, you got to check this out. And she goes, what do you see here? And I look on this film, the preview on the computer, and it's daytime. It's in a house looking out onto a lanai, and there's an additional window. It's like there's a bedroom window and there's the great room window, and through the two windows there's a little boy, and he's maybe, I don't know, he's like a 5-year-old maybe, and he's looking. It's that feeling, that eye to eye, like right here, and he's like this, and he's looking, and I'm like, what the hell? So wearing blue overalls. I'll have to show you the picture sometime. Blue overalls. He's heavily jaundiced, very yellow skin, almost brown, and he's staring at the camera. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen an actual full body apparition. He wasn't there. There was nobody in the room. There's nothing. It's just this kid. And then
I want to see that.
Yeah, I'll show. Oh, you're going to love it. When you see it, it's amazing. And then I go and find out, because this guy doesn't tell a straight story. I said, who's this little boy? So he says, I don't know. No, I said, did anything ever happen on this property? No, nothing happened. So I go in the garage and I open the door. And this is creepy. I open up the door to the garage and the side door. And the big one's still rolled down. It's kind of dark. I have a flashlight. And there's an old 4-door Chevy Nova. It's like a 69 or 70 Chevy Nova that had been there forever. And the back seat had been pulled out. And in the webbing, because they tried to make it into a race car, the back where the webbing was that holds the seat had shotgun pellet holes in it. And I said, what the hell is this? And he looks at me, he says, it came with the house. He said that the father who lived in this house before killed his children with a shotgun in this car. Wow. Before he shot himself. And so I said to the guy, so wouldn't you kind of think that this might have something to do with all of this? I mean, I'm not saying they do, but this whole death car that nobody seems to be able to get rid of, the whole thing. I said, why don't you just get it send it off to, cash for toddlers or whatever, and get $30 for the car at Garden Street, that kind of thing.
Man, so that's deep, Lee. So that may have not been the house. It could have been the car.
Could have been the car. And you see these people. So long-winded answer is, yes, you can find a lot of things if your perception is keen. But because some people wouldn't even know if they're sitting on a death car if it bit them in the butt. I mean, what, it'd take you like a millisecond to figure it out?
Yeah.
And then these other people don't even, oh yeah, well, really? You think that had something to do with it?
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. So is that when you said to him, I'm not interested in the house, but I'll take the car?
I told, the car. Yeah, I told him we gave it a shake. And, I mean, I don't know whether or not this type of activity brings upon madness, or whether madness attracts this. It's hard to tell. But this guy had every way, shape, and form of activity possible at his house, including what would be considered alien. And I so rarely drag the alien card into the mix because it's just so out there. But he says to me, he calls me up and he says, there's a rocket ship in my backyard. And I'm like, what? Okay, yes, there's a rocket ship. It lands in my backyard and it takes off, and you can see it. I have a video. I said, you got to be kidding. He says, you won't see the ship. You'll see it take off, though. Okay, all right. All right, he's got the death car. We're backtrack. Yeah. We go. I go to his house. He's got a computer. He brings up this video of the back 40, so to speak, next to his house, a video shot purposely to catch this anomaly because it's so weird. It's always in the same place. So he says to me, watch what happens. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching and I'm watching and I'm watching and watching. And then all of a sudden you see the ground sort of, or the sand starts to wiggle. You can kind of see it like this. And some form of thrusters started to actuate the dirt from beneath, and it looked like something was taking off. You could see the vapor trail. You could see all of this stuff being blown to the side. And it appeared as if something took off. Now, it wasn't a dust devil. It wasn't any of that. It didn't look like that. It was directed force coming down, and something just takes off in this guy's backyard. And that's actually the last time I saw the guy because he got so crazy afterward. But I was thinking, what the hell did I just see?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm sure that it was at a time where AI and things weren't a thing, right?
No.
Because like today, they could recreate that which makes that probably a harder thing for you to start to see videos of, hey, check out what I saw, and it's not real.
Yeah, AI.
Because they can't duplicate, things 15 years ago. It was impossible to do.
They couldn't do any of that. And, of course, even though I started doing this back in the late 70s, believe it or not, things didn't come together until like 2002, 2003, when the internet enabled all of us investigators to come together. Because previously, you wouldn't know who the hell's where and how. What are you going to put an ad in the newspaper saying, if you're a ghost hunter, call this number, right? We actually tried that, and it actually worked, believe it or not. But at any rate, it's finally, when everybody was able to get together, you were able to see all the different forms of evidence. You could rule out immediately what wasn't a ghost, But we established some parameters, some new parameters, and it was a good thing because people were just running off on their own with no concept of what they had. Now, I'll tell you, back where my heart lies is back in the days when things were hopping, when you would have like the days of the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine and other investigators like that, where I went. What got me involved at that time, I was at Cal State Northridge doing my undergrad in Southern Cal, and there was a symposium being done by a ghost hunter. I wasn't sure who it was. I later found out it was one of the Warrens.
Now explain to the listeners as well, the Warrens. Explain who the Warrens are. That may know from TV and things like that.
Yeah, Ed and Lorraine Warren are arguably the godfather and godmother of paranormal as we know it. Okay, they mixed together common sense with they had a religious background, which is fine and dandy, and that's what they had, and they relied upon a lot of that. But when the Warrens were running around, which was basically in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that kind of thing, when they were running around, there were homes and places throughout the country that were hotly haunted at this particular time. They hadn't been disturbed. There were things going on back then that I've seen, that I saw back then, that I still can't believe I've seen. And also things going on back then that aren't occurring today. It's like there was a timeline when things were live and kicking, and then there was a time when it kind of started to wane. During this period, the Warrens were very active. Things such as the Conjuring.
Yeah.
The Conjuring house is an actual true story. Amityville is not a true story, no matter how you bake it.
Sure.
It's not true. Yes, it's true. Well, how do I know? Because a good friend of mine's brother owned the place. But, when you had Lutz killed his family with a shotgun, and that's all true. But what ends with that is, that's where the stories begin and facts end. Because all that happened at Amityville was that after Lutz had killed his family, he was so stricken with remorse, which happens to many people who do that he set the people up in their beds with the covers pulled up and the neat little pillows all fluffed. And one of the investigators who was there was reported as saying, It's amazing how they look so alive. He said, it's almost as if some supernatural force had placed them like that. And those words, supernatural force, is what turned into this whole Amityville horror thing. Okay, so now let's go back to the Warrens. So the Warrens were on and in places that were haunted back in the day. And the Conjuring house, which is no longer haunted, and a lot of other places, they were there. I went on a group adventure with this team from that was at Cal State Northridge, and that's how I got involved in that. And then I started doing my own thing, and these people, the Warrens and others, they were using all analog equipment, tape recorders with actual tape, all sorts of different kinds of cameras and all sorts of things, but they kept it real. Very interesting. They also saw some remarkable things. I was in a house where the refrigerator was torn away from the wall while we were there. The police were still in the house because they were called because there was a disruption in the home, and it was indeed there.
Where was this at?
Van Nuys, California.
Okay.
It was in Van Nuys.
So you've seen this?
Oh my God! I saw the refrigerator torn out of the wall, and
was that with your group that you're with?
That was with this group, right?
Yeah.
And they tore the place that your hair's standing on end when you walk in. You could feel the electricity, and it was buzzing like that. Like I was like, like you wanted to shake it off. And then when I walked into the kitchen, something took the refrigerator, and the way refrigerators are slid back into that little cubby.
And they're hard to get out, and they're not easy to
move, right? Because they bang against the wall.
Yeah.
It indeed did what you're suggesting. It rattled and shook, and when it had the opportunity, it was torn out of its spot. I don't even know if the cord was plugged in, and the damn thing was torn and rolled across the linoleum, and it banged against the wall. That kind of thing. Now, one of the main investigators who was there, who had been there a while, he looked at me because we both saw the refrigerator move. And what makes this kind of thing so fun is that years later, at a conference in the Midwest, I forget whether it's somewhere in Illinois, I believe, or maybe it was something up around there, I bumped into him again. How many years are you talking about? Almost 50. And we were just talking randomly. I didn't know who this guy randomly, and I was talking about this refrigerator, and he looks at me, he goes, he says, you were there? I said, yeah. I said, and then we were at the same house in Van Nuys. Wow. It's the house that they ended up making a movie out of called The Entity. And
you've seen that?
Yeah.
There's not many horror movies I haven't seen, Lee.
So I've
seen most of them.
Well, The Entity, that was good. What I loved about The Entity is that it was true. And so the reason I bring these things up is that back in the day, there used to be some very, very hot, acutely hot haunts that were fascinating where stuff's flying around. Now, I've seen furniture flying around. I've been hit with furniture because it's exciting. I've had this happen and all these things, but it hasn't been happening as often lately. And that's something that we investigators nationally and internationally have been discussing, is that where is the activity? Now, I'm not suggesting that there's no more activity and people should move on, but rather I can tell people this. You can't keep going to the same place that's got a ghost story attached to it and expect to scare up ghosts, because like anything in nature, if you tread too heavily, it's going to disappear. Plus also, too, it doesn't take into account things like paranormal decay, where you've got, it's like where like an isotope, when it has its half-life, it's half as strong, in periods. Paranormal activity becomes less strong with age. Maybe 10 years from now, it's half as strong, then it's a quarter as strong, then it's an eighth as strong. It usually halves itself. So now we're looking at these places like the Conjuring house, where my buddy Josh was just recently there. Conjuring house is empty. It's gutted of energy. It came and went long ago, this, that, and the other thing, So now, in order to find these hot places, you have to stay away from ghost stories. You have to stay away from when you're told, oh, this place, what the Lizzie Borden house and this house. That's not it's not happening at the Lizzie Borden. So where do you look? Anywhere that no one hasn't.
It's like fishing.
Just like
fishing spots are good in the beginning until everybody finds out there's a spot there, and then the fish go, well, we're going somewhere else.
That's right. They go right. They you know, the fish know. That's just how it is. You know, you wear the place out, and it's dead, and there's no more. There's nothing more you can distill out of a place. And what I see nowadays, and it's been happening a while, is that people, they tread too heavily over a lot of these places, and they leave them. You know, they just overstay their welcome. Now, talk about something creepy. We're in Northern Cal. I'm visiting. We've got a show we're doing in San Francisco. So I'm out there in Placerville, up in the gold mining area, where my wife and I met actually there. And I had some friends I hadn't seen in, 15, 20 years. So I thought I'd start dropping in on people. So long story short, met a gal I knew for years who was a good friend. She had no idea what was coming. I hadn't seen her in, like I said, 15, 20 years. I pull up. She looks out the front window. She's like, oh, my God, it's you, right? So we're talking. And then she says, I said, so how are the kids? How are the kids doing? And she says, well, they haven't been doing well since the baby died. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, who? I said, what baby? What, you know, because a lot of transpired since then.
Yeah.
Well, her son had named Joe, coincidentally, her son named Joe had, he and his wife had a baby, and they brought it home. It was like, you know, everything was fine. They brought the baby home. They had it in the bassinet there was like a house adjacent to the main one. It was all, you know, finished, beautiful house, and they were living in that house with the baby. And the first night that they brought it home, the mother woke up at night, because the little bassinet's across the room. She saw a dark figure standing over the bed. And she jumped up and screamed and ran at it, and it just vanished, disappeared. So the next night, she woke up, and the baby ended up dying of SIDS, you know, sudden infant death syndrome, you know, asphyxia of unknown origin. It's like this thing, this shadow form, you know, thing I've chased. You know, they have lots of names for it, okay? But it's like the thing linked to when people have sleep paralysis and all that. Anyhow, something choked out the baby. You know, you can call it any kind of asphyxia, but there's no medicine cannot explain what happens when it with SIDS. It's of unknown origin. Yeah. At any rate, the second night, this shadow thing got a hold of that child, and so now I said, oh my God, this is terrible. And I said, you know, this, I can't believe it. So she said, then I asked her, because she knew what I did and stuff. I said, you mind if I go walking down the house? And she says, I haven't been to that house since the baby died, since that night. So I walked down to the house, and there are the remains of when the paramedics were there. There's like IV bag tubes on the ground right at the front porch, and there's like an old IV bag, and there's tape, you know, all these things that they use when they're saving somebody's life, trying to save this child. And so I grab the knob and I turn it, and I open the door. And as soon as I open the door, this damn thing, the thing, it comes alive, and it's running around the perimeter of inside the house like a cat running along the baseboards, and it's making this shrill sound like a peacock, that kind of thing, and it's like, and I'm standing like, whoa. You know, you can imagine like you know, what hair I had left was like standing up, right? And I walked into the place, and there was like fuzz coming off of me from this, you know, electricity. My hair's standing up right now.
Yeah, I got the chills
telling you the
thinking of
story.
that, yeah.
And I told it, I go, I said, you're not going to scare me. You know, I told it, I said, get the hell out of here. I said, you're not going to, this is the guy who's not getting scared, you know, that kind of thing. Well, what was it? If you put the pieces together, you know, you'll hear things about like in America, they call it the night hag. I know it's kind of a crazy reach, but in Europe, they call it the banshee. Latin America, it's La Llorona, the crier, all these different things. And now
Like the movie.
Like the movie, yes. No, I've chased that thing and chased it and chased it. And I cannot tell you how, like in our van that says Ghost Pros on the side, I can't tell you how many people will come up to me, like at a gas station when we pull up to fuel up. They'll come up to me and they'll tell me a night hag story. Like some guy out of left field. He just comes up to the van. He's like, on the window, you roll it down. He's like, I got something to tell you. I got something to tell you. Have you ever heard? And they describe it identically. And it's not some guy who watched a movie. This is before that. The shape, it's got this thing on its back. It's all of these different kinds of things. Now, so as a sidebar, I start chasing this thing. I'm always one step behind it. It's always, always. It leaves a trail, whereas ghosts don't. It leaves a trail, but I'm always a day late and $1 short on that kind of thing. So it makes noise. It leaves money. Like people will find like pennies and nickels on the ground that didn't make any sense. And it makes this cackling sound that sounds like a bird. Like, so the creepiest thing would be a friend of mine here in the Cape starts having this type of thing happen with her young daughter. And she told me, and this gave me the creeps. She said, that thing that comes, because I had told her that. She says, that thing that comes by at night and wakes the daughter and this and that. She says, well, my daughter came to our room the other night and banged me like, mommy, 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 and woke her up and said, that woman's in my room right now. And she's looking, she says, that woman's in my room right now. She gave me money. She said, and then she looked at, and so my friend sits on the bench, she's looking at her, she says, but you don't have to be afraid of her because she's a bird. And then she says, and she does this.
Wow.
Like she makes the sound, and my hair just stood up because like a bird will make that sound. So what do you got? You've got this crazy ass thing you'll never find because it's always a step ahead. Modern medicine doesn't acknowledge any of this because you'd be certifiably mad. That kind of thing. Yet the only thing people know for sure is that these people are dying. They've got a label for it that doesn't, I guess it makes about as much sense as it could.
Yeah.
But,
So can you just leave? If you left, would it just stay in the house, or could it ever follow you, or how would that work?
What I've found is that it's hard to tell whether there's one or many of these things. It's hard to tell. The interactions are all the same. They seem to occur at different places. Now, there's a chapter in my book, Master of the Abyss, that explains my encounters with this thing, and it's they're spot on in regard to what other people have come up to me and said they've experienced. And of course, with paranormal, the only way you can distill out any credibility is if things are repeatable, just like science. Can you repeat this phenomena? And there are a lot of repeatable phenomena that occur to kind of tell me, you can almost second guess where it'll be, or you can tell if it was truly it versus something else. But I don't know. I think that what we're dealing with are subsets of unexplained phenomena. It's not the same thing everywhere. It's different things with different abilities, and the one common goal is that they come out of nowhere and vanish into thin air, like into ether. And now, does that leave a trace or a trail? Yeah. Electronic, you could have an EMF, electromagnetic field. You can have an EMF detector, and it'll spike, like the same type of spike as if somebody turned on a microwave. So there's ambient energy in the room from this occurrence. And a lot of people, I guess folks from Southwest Florida might remember there used to be a museum right off of Jefferson in downtown Fort Myers near the courthouse, and it had an old Pullman train car out in front of it. And when I first signed on with a team in Florida, when I first came here 20-something years ago, we investigated that train car, with permission from the museum. And furniture would get thrown around inside this car. There were 3 little sleepers and a kitchen and a dining room, and furniture would get thrown around. And long story short, I had a small, like a stool, a little cabinet stool thing thrown at me. And after it was, we looked at it with a FLIR, when there's these the heat-seeking FLIR. It was a handheld FLIR. And we could see a red spot in the center of the piece of wood that was bright red, which would indicate extreme heat or energy. And then it radiated out to yellow and white and blue and green and all that. But everything that had been thrown, it's as if it had been like hit with a lightning bolt of energy and or heat. And the thing it hit just blew across the room.
Yeah,
That
it's not like a handprint. It's more of
an explosion.
Yeah. So is that like, you think that's a dimension thing, Lee? Like, you think that ghosts and spirits and things like that would be from a different dimension?
I don't know.
How do you think that that's done? Because if they just go away, just vanish.
See, that's the thing.
Where do they go?
Where do they go? The dimensional thing, I think the concept of dimension makes sense because, we don't understand it all, but just to stick a lid on the pot for a while and say, let's call it a different dimension. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I think too many people get too wrapped up. I think it's even more than a dimension. I think it's something so unexplainable we don't understand the science yet.
Sure.
You
think they ever will?
No, because you're chasing the exhaust fumes. You'll never find the motor.
Yeah, like you said, you can never get ahead of one.
You cannot get ahead of one.
So if you were to get ahead of one of these, what could you do, or what would happen? Are you able to, put one away and just,
I don't think that's where my personally where I draw the line with the whole cross them over heaven and hell thing. And I stay away from that.
Yeah.
That is strictly conjecture. Love you to death, but it's conjecture. Until God comes down and literally says to me, well, those are my disciples. Until then, it's unknown energy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because when they start mixing together religion and beliefs, and you mix unsubstantiated beliefs with reality, they don't mix. There has to be a wall between the two.
Sure.
Because it's unsubstantiated, So it's not a demon. It's not the dear departed. It's not Uncle Bob. It's not somebody who's caught between dimensions. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just something we can't quite explain. Now, what can I tell you? I'll tell you this. Have I spoken to or been spoken to by ghosts? Yes, I have been spoken to by what we call ghosts. Okay. And for example, perfect example, right down here on Poinciana, which is just a couple blocks away. We're on Poinciana. This is 20 years ago.
Old street.
Old street,
homes.
old homes, right, exactly, right here on Poinciana. And I get a call. It's on one of the. It's a beautiful house, and it's on a canal somewhere, pointed way back there, and so we get this call that there's a lot of activity in this house. So first we show up to do a preliminary. So I show up with a friend of mine. We sit down. She and I sit down with the family in the front room by the kitchen, and we're talking. And while we're talking about what's going on, I hear like the news or the TV's going down the hall. And now this is set up as typical 3-2 with a great room, that kind of thing. So who's in that room? They say that's the ghost. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm like, sure.
Love to go in there.
Love to go in there. I was like, hang on just a minute. I'm going to go check something out, right? So I go walking down the hall. And this also, too, is the beginning of the road that made me famous, so to speak. Right at that moment, I go walking down this hall, and as I'm walking, it sounds like the evening news, starts sounding like water dribbling. And when I walk into the bedroom and look around the corner, there's a big 100-gallon fish tank, and it's evaporated down about 3 inches on the top, and there's fish in it, and the filter is bubbling because it needs to, so it's like blah 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 blah, and it's sounding like voice. So I walk back down in the hall, and it sounds like voice. Over here sounds like water. So I kind of get in between the two, and I stick my recorder down there, and I turn it on, and I walk away, and we're all sitting there like this, and I said, I said, is there anybody in the house that wants to talk to us? I said, anybody, you know? And it's like, yes, like you hear the voice like that. And then I'm like, is there anybody here that wants to talk to us? So we do this about 15 minutes. I take the recorder off, I shut it off, I plug it into my, I've got a program that does all this great stuff, and I plug it in there, and now I can play it, and I can raise and lower the amplitude and all this kind of stuff, and I'm listening to it, and it's going, I'll pull the mic close so you can hear the best. It says, it's babbling, and then it goes, I just can't stop the seizure. And I'm like,
wow.
Then it goes, 9 cancers. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Okay, what the hell? Now,
I got the chills on that one.
Creepy as hell. Okay, now, next thing you know, I went out and made my own version of Frank's box, but I'm using water. The only person on Earth using water. That's what I'm known for.
Yeah.
How do I use it? It's none of their business, okay? Because there's a twist on things. But all there is water and the way I configure it. Okay, it's the shape of it. Because water has shape. Shape determines sound. So, like this room, like how much headroom do you have? Those kind of things. It's important to note. So, the babbling brook, all of those different sounds, they're all on water. My goal was to find out where on this water these voices are and why and what it is about this soft, natural phenomena that allows paranormal activity to piggyback on it. And after I looked at this and this and this and this and this, I started realizing that it's about natural. It can't be unnatural. It can't be spewing out of a radio. It can't be that broken TV in the back.
Yeah.
It's got to be organic.
Not the record playing backwards like the movies.
Yeah, it's got to be organic. Now, switch forward 20, 30, 20 years from then, and I've got a team, we're with Travel Channel, we got a team, and we're on sunken shipwrecks. We're pulling voice out of shipwrecks. I built in my shop, I built these sonars. They're parabolic sonars, and we're sticking them upside in these sunken ships in the air pockets where people breathe their last breath, and we're pulling voice out of these pockets, because there's a recorder floating inside. Yeah, people are talking to us in sunken ships who perished.
I've seen a lot of that on your social media now as well. Or YouTube and stuff like that. Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, going down into the depths, it ain't like you can walk out of the room, right? I mean, you're down.
You're down. Yeah, you can hear it, and then you can hear it. And you also start learning that when you start looking into the linguistics of it, you start realizing that people speak and mutter all the time who aren't, like they'll be, like I'm like this, there's a second track, they'll go, they're kind of talking like this, and then they keep on talking and they say, they speak when they're thinking. And so you get people with scuba masks underwater speaking to themselves. They're like, oh boy, well, I'm freezing my ass off over here, and you have to learn what's this guy over here talking to his mask, because you can hear it through the water for far, right? So then we started we built drones. They're really cool, winged drones, and what the idea was is that these winged drones have a recorder inside of them. It's a hydrophone. And we'd put them over sunken ships about 100, 150 feet deep, and they would be tethered to the deck on a free line. And since the current is usually 1.5 knots to 3 knots, which is a lot of current, it'll make the drone fly off because of the current coming at it. And we'll set these recorders on 24 hours, and we'll get a 24-hour recording of a shipwreck that nobody's on. For instance, we seed it, we leave it. There's no pleasure boats. There's no mothership. We'll be back in 24 hours. Nobody's leaving. Everybody's back in town having a margarita. Nobody's out here diving these ships. And we'd come back 24 hours later or 12 hours later, and we're pulling sound off these ships. People talking to us. And it is the coolest thing, because when you start working with a media that allows transference. They speak, we speak. We're actually communicating, those kind of things. The first thing you find out is they don't care about your questions. Nope. They care about what they have to say. Why? Because nobody's listened to them in God knows how many years, and they have every right to be heard, right? So you can say, well, what's your name, blah, blah, blah. And then the answer will be like, like one time I was in this haunted place alone, and I'm asking all these questions, and out of left field, like right here in the room, it goes, neighbor. I'm like, neighbor? Like, what the hell is that? And it's nothing. Hair standing up as usual, but yeah. So then
that's crazy.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you learn about you learn right quick that if you use multiple natural sources, the synergy of those sources together will sometimes be like a multiplier. For instance, if you're just using water, that's great. If you're using water in a specific container, that can even make the playing field a little more rich, because now you're working with shapes. Let's try a round shape. Let's try a square shape. Let's try a long shape. Which wave works better?
Yeah.
Do you get this kind of thing? So like a buddy of mine calls me up who's as into this as I am, except he's on land mostly, and I do it with wrecks. I just like shipwrecks because it's fun. So and he has fun too. So he's in England near like the cliffs of Dover, those kind of things, and he's out there, and there's a tea house. It's a little tea house out on the tip, and this isn't a tourist spot. This is way out in the boonies on some cliff near the sea. And it's been long rumored to have activity. So what does he do? He goes out there and he takes 16 hand-blown glasses like mugs or whatever. They have to be hand-blown because they have to be irregular. They can't be machine cut because that makes it less natural. So he takes 16 hand-cut glasses, and on the top of these glasses, he'll place like a ruler across the top, and it's uneven because it's not cut with a knife. It's cut, I don't know how the hell it's cut, but anyhow, it's kind of wobbly.
Yeah.
Then he takes 16 dinner plates made the same way. It's china, and it's irregularly, that kind of thing. So he goes in this tea house that's completely empty, and it's just a big hardwood floor building with like 4 or 5 windows or whatever. And he goes and he sets the 16 glasses on the ground, face up, 4 rows of 4. Then he takes 16 little Sony recorders and he flips them all on, making a note of what time he flipped them on so that later on when they're transposed on this sound forge, you can overlay the sounds, because the time it takes to flip on the recorder and stick it in might be 20, 30 seconds, right? So you got to keep, so he does this. Then once he's sequenced all 16 of these, once they're all turned on in these cups, he takes these dinner plates and he puts the dinner plates on top of each one. So you've got this irregular dinner plate on top of this irregularly cut glass. Perfect. Okay. Then he goes and walks outside, locks the door, and drives away. So 24 hours later, he comes back and scoops up all his stuff, and he puts 1, 2, 3, 4 all on the sound forge, interlays 16 tracks, and they're all now interfaced like this, all of them stacked. And he listens to them. So next thing you know, I get a call from England. You got to hear this. You got to hear what I heard. Okay. So I go and he tells me about it. He says, I'm going to send you a CD. This is back in the days of the CD.
Yeah.
Sends me a CD. And he says, remember, it's a 24-hour CD. So he says, just put your earphones on and listen to the damn CD. Okay. All right, fine. So I'm outside and I'm weeding. I'm outside weeding in my front yard by the planter.
With a CD player on your hip.
On my hip, back at the good old, like the Walkman.
Yeah, the good
right
days,
there,
yeah.
listening to it. I hear the front door close. I hear his car start, like a little MG.
Yeah.
Vroom, blah, blah, blah. I hear his wheels on the gravel as he's driving to the road, and then he's gone. Nothing but the ever-present hollowness of the sound created by nothing. because you know nothing has sound.
Yeah.
Nothing can be the loudest thing in the world. So it's like, you know, that sound. Where's that? What? Like it's like thunderous air sheeting over between the glass and plate. You know, that skinny little part. So it's like, you know, hearing. So I'm listening to for about an hour outside. You know, I kind of forgot it was on, and I'm listening. Then I hear this, and I stop. I stop weeding. I'm like, what? And then that sound starts to rattle the glasses.
Yeah.
And a voice starts to come in over it. That kind of thing. And it starts to speak. And I'm like, good God, this is interesting. Fascinating.
Wow.
Where's it coming from? I couldn't tell you.
That's crazy, though, that his little setup with the glasses and the dishes and everything, or with the glasses with the dishes on top. And man.
I use that setup. I love that setup. Yeah. That setup has yielded some crazy-ass things. I was in a house in the Cape, which has got a lot of hauntings. And I set up one of those suckers in one of the rooms that was really hotly haunted, and the damn thing got kicked in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Like, kicked across the room. You know, the cup's over here, the plate's over here. Nobody kicked it.
Sure.
Nobody's in the room. Yeah, if you toss together, you know, I was in Grafton, Illinois. There's an Italian joint. And they've got this old style fountain going with the berries and the Greek stuff and everything, and you can hear the water babbling. And if you sit in the restaurant and you listen down the hall at this babbling entry fountain, you can hear somebody talking.
Yeah.
So, what do I think? I think it's interesting as hell.
Yeah, that's a cool career. Maybe one day I'll man up and you could take me somewhere.
Come on by.
Scare me.
Well, I'll tell you, with the background that you have, you know, you've got a scientific background. You're inquisitive, and I think it's great that you're not overly scientific either.
Yeah.
Because you know it's no fun if you poo-poo everything that happens. You know, because remember, it's a bunch of guys and girls running around in the dark with flashlights.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. If you can't have fun with that, I don't know what to tell you.
Sure.
You know, it's just fun. It's Scooby-Doo. It's you know, I mean, when's the last time you had an opportunity to go somewhere where it's like a Scooby-Doo adventure?
Do you enjoy, like, every time like something crazy happens, like the refrigerator moving? When that happened, were you like, why am I here? Like, I don't want to be here, or were you just,
no,
let's go. I want to see more. You want to see more of these things then?
Oh yes. To me, if I'm not getting knocked on my ass, it's just no fun. I'm you know, an adrenaline junkie. No, I'm an action junkie. Absolutely. Who doesn't like action? Yeah. You know, sure. I mean, sometimes there's times where the activity is so slight that it's not worth worrying about. Because that's another thing too. And this is important to note for anyone who's listening about this particular thing I'm going to say. Just because you had some activity at your house doesn't mean it needs to be exercised. It doesn't have to have a priest come by. You don't have to have any of these things. What you've got is you had an occurrence. You had a ghost came and visited. No different than a squirrel on your front lawn. 1 minute you don't have a squirrel, the next thing you have a squirrel, the next minute you don't have a squirrel. So if you had a ghost last week or you had a ghost last night, it doesn't mean your house is haunted. It just means you had a ghost. And just like that squirrel, he moved off to greener pastures, he may never be back.
Sure.
Whereas a haunting is different. A haunting is way different. Hauntings are what I go after. I'm not interested in a ghost. You know, I've experienced them, I've seen them, I've felt them, I've been spoken to by. I've had every possible thing happen with ghosts, and that I don't need any more of that. What I'm looking for is a hot haunt.
What happens at that point? The next steps to where you can't take the next step, right? Whether it's an exorcism or something like that, for example. What happens if it's a problem?
Well, the problem is, I find that a lot of these problems are sort of brought about by the people who experience them. because it has a lot to do with and it ties into a lot of psychological theory, which I learned in medical school years back, my original profession. So when I learned about all these psychological indicators and markers and all this, a lot of people who come to us they suffer from affective disorders, things along those lines. And what you're starting to see is like an acting out type of mechanism with some. They're almost always don't have control with their life. If you look at their life, it is just a shambles, just a dreadful shambles. Drugs, almost always. To the point now where we've had one for years. We've got it's a waiver that you sign, but it asks straight up questions about drug abuse, substance abuse, these things. So, the reason I mentioned that.
How's your sleep patterns?
Yeah, well,
Sleep, right?
things right. But people go and a lot of them bring these things upon themselves. For example, okay, it was a theory, but it holds water. Okay, why is it that you could be out in the bush somewhere? You could be in an area that's maybe a little bit less affluent, so to speak, because it happens to be. Why is it that a lot of areas where you have lower than average education, educability is questionable, people's interpretation of things is questionable due to their base education and their ability to distill through these things and to just explain them. So why is it that 99 out of 100 calls we get to investigate happen in homes where the education level is extremely low, the poverty level is extremely high, but they just aren't happening in Cape Harbor? Okay, why don't you get called out to Cape Harbor? Why would the ghosts care what building you're in, right?
Yeah.
And what I find is that a lot of, it's an interpretation of what happened. Sometimes it's, like you or I would say, there's condensation on the end of our glass, on the bottom. You know how you put a glass down and it moves on the thing? It's to them, it's the dear departed, it's grandma. To me and you, it's condensation. Okay, you have to dig through all that. Now, here's something that gets weird because, you'll hear me say things out of like two sides of my mouth. Yes, there is a correlation between socioeconomics and ghosts. And I've actually lectured on that. Some people get offended, but there's just the way it is. Okay, then there's the couple of times where I eat crow, where exactly what I'm thinking is the opposite. That'll happen, right? So this is what I've noticed. There's no ghosts at Cape Harbor, but there will be stuff that'll make your skin crawl in these other areas. And I'll go there, and what I'll find is the socioeconomics are such where things like cultural mores, like wife beating and all these things prevail, or they're pervasive. When you have this going on, the worse the abuse, child abuse, number one, the worse the abuse in that house, the worse the paranormal activity is going to get. I can almost button it up with a more than just a theory. It's kind of fact.
Yeah.
I've walked into places where we're having this dark shadow form in the house and this and that, and there's a ghost running around inside the house, and the kids are being terrified. And I walk in the house somewhere out in Buckingham. I don't tell you where. Somewhere out in Buckingham. It's like a single wide this and that. It's winter in Florida, so it's like 47 degrees on one of those nights that we hate.
Yeah.
I'm out there. The people are out front in the front porch, one cigarette after another, chain smoking, and they've got these little children. I don't know if they were twins, but they were in diapers, but they were like 3-day-old diapers. And they could speak. They spoke. And I was like, hey, I was like, oh, honey, what's happening? What are you hearing? What's happening? Oh, there's this thing in my room and blah, 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 blah. And I go in the room And there are spider webbing the kids' beds to the wall. It's like black widows living in these freaking spiders. Like if you're laying in bed and you reached over the side, your hand would be covered with webs. Okay. There's spiders crawling all over the kids when they sleep. Their diaper hasn't been changed in 3 days. They're half fed. Yet the family has enough money for cigarettes galore. There's all these empty cartons. And they've got a ghost. Well, gee whiz, no wonder.
Yeah.
You know? Why? Because they definitely are, for some reason, attracted to discourse. There's a correlation, and you asked earlier about types of haunts. There's a correlation between discourse and haunting strength. Like how bad is this haunting going to get? Well, if you keep having this environment that somehow fosters more angst and grief, this angst and grief has a way of coming alive. Like it you hear people talking about wrestling with their own demons. It's like they're wrestling. It's not a demon, but it's something.
Yeah.
And they're wrestling with it. And it got a hold of them, maybe brought in through addiction, maybe brought in through abuse, maybe brought in through God knows when. But there's always
Yeah.
a root cause. Pest inspectors see it, like exterminators. They look for the portal of entry. They're not looking for where the bugs are now. They're looking for how they got in. And I got to figure out how they got in. And they always get in through abuse.
That's interesting.
Here it's mostly meth. Yeah. You'll get the outlying county areas where meth is a problem, and meth is, and they lie, of course. So when we come out there, we'll come out there with the team. Not charging anybody any money. We're doing it for the sake of the kids, this and that. We come out there and they lie right at you.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of the investigation, the one or two people we allow to stay with us, because we don't allow a whole family in. The one or two have to stay with us. They always have to go somewhere in the middle of the night. Oh, well, we'll be back. We'll be back in a little way. I'm like, it's 2:00 in the morning. Where the hell are you going?
Yeah, who leaves at 2 a.m, right?
Yeah, and there's only one thing you're coming back with at 2 in the morning, right? So
yeah, that's interesting. Maybe your idea of the correlation. I mean, that's what you do.
There's something to do. There seems to be some type of an attractive nature that this discourse creates.
Yeah.
Well, is that not? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think.
You had mentioned to me that you had been at an exorcism before.
Yeah.
So, for the non-believers, the believers, just explain what happens, the room, how it goes down, if you at that point are a believer in what's happening, and just kind of paint a little scene for me.
Well, exorcisms are a funny thing. You see, and here in the States, it's mostly considered a cleansing. Okay, they're mostly considered a cleansing. I have seen one exorcism / cleansing where there were actually facial changes on the person, where Josh, my paranormal investigator buddy, we're standing there in this room looking at this woman who's laying there in this bed, and for a second she had somebody else's face. Like she contorted. It's not like, like it was a contortion of of the norm, but what she contorted into somebody else. Some weird facial contortion. And people can do a lot of things when they're believing they're either in need of like if they're possessed, they think they're possessed,
Yeah.
They do some crazy things.
Was Josh new at this point when he was with you?
He was pretty new.
Did he get his real estate license and say, "Hey, man, I'm getting my license. I'm out"?
Yeah, that's it. He was
this ain't
done.
what I'm called. This ain't what I was expecting.
He and I have seen some crazy stuff. Yeah, like it taking 6 hours to drive on a highway that's 15 miles long and nobody can still explain it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like off Tennessee somewhere in the holler.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had some like otherworldly, But yeah, so an exorcism. Exorcisms sanctioned by the Catholic Church are just behind closed doors. That's it. I've been to cleansings where people will do like Diksha blessings, which is a whole different Diksha. It's like a Hindu religious type of thing.
Because you wouldn't be able to be at an actual exorcism because it's done through the church, right?
Through the church, right?
Yeah.
It's done through the church. Absolutely.
And those happen.
Yeah, but they're very, 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 very rare. They're very rare.
Like, how rare? 10 years, for the past 10 years, how many would actually be
Well,
real?
I know this. You know, if it was one a year, it would be a lot, but there have been changes, and the church has actually recognized that there are changes in activity, and the hot haunts aren't that hot anymore. Fascinating.
Yeah,
It's very, very fascinating.
sure.
And whereas they have, I would say now they're almost non-existent.
Sure.
You know, there may be a couple. Another one we saw, this woman's face contorted, and she was just. It's like, what happened to this woman? Why did she just make these facial marks? You know, she's screaming and she's growling, and all of a sudden it's like somebody else's face, and she looked bewildered.
When it was all done, was everything okay?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's still wacko.
So things like Ouija boards, right?
Okay.
People always get a little freaked out. One of my favorite movies is Ouija. It's called Witchboard.
Yeah, I
You
know,
ever seen
yeah.
Witchboard?
Oh, yeah,
Great
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Great. Scary movie, actually. Witchboards. Could they be real? Have you ever seen one move?
Oh, my God, yes.
Okay,
I
so
use them all the time.
Really? So they can work.
They're great. Let me tell you something. Really, the only thing standing between a Ouija board being an everyday used tool and where it is now is people's fear driven by television. For example, okay, a lot of people don't know, first of all, what the original Ouija board was for. I don't know if you guys are familiar with. Back in the day of William Fuld, the man who created these boards, they used to use these boards for dating purposes. See, like back when, like around the Industrial Revolution, all that, even prior to that, you would have, like when houses had a parlor in the front. Remember, there was a parlor. You walked in and you sat in the parlor. What would happen is that a young man would come by a house looking to court the woman, the girl who lives at the house with her parents. So he would be invited in, and he would sit in the parlor to see while it was being determined whether or not the girl, this young woman, even wanted to meet with him at all. So what would she do? She would consult the talking board. And she would sit here with this talking board and this big glass planchette that she would look through. And she would ask questions like, to the spirits, should I allow this young man to take me out on a date? And then she'd have her hands on it, or her hands with her mother there. And they would move it, yes, no, and they would do these things. And let's say it was yes. The spirits have spoken. She can go on a date with you now. Then every single step that keeps on going on, they consult the spirits, because that way, if she gets a bad call and the guy turns out to be an idiot, they can say, well, it was the spirit's fault, not ours. Okay, so now let's race up all these years to where William Fuld built the first talking board for spirit contact. It's basically just a tool. All of the letters in the alphabet, yes and no, and some numbers, right? Now, nowadays, and this is so funny, I get a chuckle out of it. If, let's say, this is a tape recorder or a digital recorder, investigators will take this thing and they'll put it down and they'll say, would anybody like to talk to us? Is there anybody here in the room that wants to talk to us? Blah, 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 blah. If you put down a Ouija board, is there anybody here that would like to talk to us? Is there anybody in the room who would like to talk to us? All it is another mode of doing the same exact thing. Here he spelled it out. Here he wrote it with an auto pen. Here he said it on the recorder in answer to the exact same questions. For instance, they say, well, if you use a Ouija board, demons will come through. Demons aren't going to come through any more likely than they're going to come through your tape recorder. Okay, so now, have I seen them work? Without question.
Have you seen them move without hands on them?
I believe I'm one of the few people who've seen a planchette actually move. Fascinating. Well, it was in a big house I built on the spreader some years ago in the Cape. And it was almost done. And the contractors were having experiences at the house while it was being built. And I'd hear all these stories, and, so we'd go upstairs, Josh included, and a bunch of us, it was a big ass house. A bunch of us would sit in the master with a big Pilates ball, with my wife's Pilates ball. And it would roll from person to person. Now, that's not something you see every day. You'd sit there on the ground, 4 or 5 people, and it would just roll and stop. And then it would roll and stop. So we established this pattern where there was something in the house moving things. A brand new construction house. So started using the Ouija board. And then I started doing what you're not supposed to do, but I did it because it was fascinating, was I started using it myself, which is a little...
Like the movie.
Yeah, like I was...
Malfador was the spirit in Witchboard.
Yeah, in Witchboard. Yeah, yeah. It's
Malfador.
Same kind of thing.
He possessed the... forget her name, the redhead,
Yeah, exactly.
Model,
Yeah, that's how it was. So we had... So... One night, I had a few friends over, A, to check out the house, B, to check out the Ouija board. So we were in the master because it was hot in the master. And we had a session, and then the planchette was sitting there, and all of a sudden there's a noise, like... And I look at the damn planchette is wiggling like this, and then it goes... And it moves on those little skids,
Yeah.
And we're all like... And then... Josh, because this is 20 years ago, Josh, he was like a kid. And he's like, is it supposed to do that? And I said, on TV it would. I said, for reality, no. It's not supposed to do that.
And then you looked at the planchette, and it was the arrow that was at you, right? The point was pointing right at you.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even.
I'm kidding.
Of course, yeah. No, I'll tell you what.
That's
but then a couple of nights later, my wife and I finally move into the house. This is, we CO'd, we moved into the house, but my daughter's at our other one. We had a third house. And big house, big upstairs. We go upstairs in the master suite. I shut the door. It's time to go to bed. All of a sudden, somebody on the door to the bedroom.
Yeah.
My wife is sitting there like, who the hell is that? So I yell out, hello? Nobody. I go turn the bedroom door, and I kind of open it and look out. Just pitch black. And, yeah, it moved stuff.
And is that what you told your wife? Hey, honey, we got a good house. It's right up my alley.
Which is perfect.
It's got everything that we're looking for.
It's got everything. My Bob, my daughter named it Bob, and we had Bob for years. And she, while the house we live in now has got some activity, she grew up with Bob.
Yeah.
And she thought, so she was just normal.
Yeah.
Normal. I heard that, oh yeah, it's Bob.
So check this out, Lee. Kind of a cool story. Never sold the house, but it was a weird story. So I go in and look at the house. They want me to give me a price on what it looked like, right? I go in, I look at it. It's kind of eerie. It's big. It's historic.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a newer constructed historic home to make it look like an older house.
Yeah, yeah.
So I go in there. I'm in the master now. And all of a sudden I hear this thing fall behind me. A mirror fell off the wall that was stuck to the wall with... like the mirror in your bathroom. Those don't fall.
No.
On the ground next to me, almost hit me in the head.
Yeah.
Thought that was a little bit weird. So I told my team, I said, I didn't want to tell them that happened, but I said, come look at this house with me. And I just want to see if anybody else feels the way I feel in this house. They said to me, Joe, I feel like there's something going on here. Mm-hmm. It feels haunted to me. Never thought much about it again. Now I need to go back again because they wanted me to look at something else, take pictures, and maybe get some estimates and getting some work done. So I go back in, and the person that was with me said that they could see a spirit next to them, standing right next to them. And I thought, that's kind of weird. I didn't really trust the source.
Yeah, you never know, right.
But I said, what does it look like? What did it look like? He said, I could see the shape of the body right next to me, about this tall. Yeah. Swear to God. Yeah. And they were dead serious. Made me kind of believe that maybe there was something. Anyway, next time I come back, and I'm going back to sell this house now. We get the work done, everything's good to go. And I'm ready to sell this house. I come in, there's a chandelier upstairs. It's it's probably 30 feet in the air. The chandelier was as big as this room probably. and there's a table right below it. I walk in, and the chandelier is exploded off the table. The day I was going to sell the property, going to list it. I didn't list it. Somebody else got the listing. But I thought, man, that's weird. You know, for those sequences to happen.
Yes.
Is that a thing? Could that be something that I might have experienced?
I think so. I can give cite other comparable examples where things like that have happened. As we know, there are some properties that have been locked up a while. They've been closed up a while.
Vacant.
Vacant. And what ends up happening is, and this is something I discovered. It's kind of neat. Is when houses sit a while, and the sun bakes down on them over time, the curtains and any type of window dressing or anything like that have a tendency to absorb photons, just like a solar panel would. That's why when you come up to a house that's had drapes pulled for a long time and you reach behind them to go pull them open, the hair will stand up on your arm. And we've all felt that static electricity. Well, what ends up happening is, what I've found is that static energy, when we come into a house, usually it's the setup guy, which has been me for a lot of years, setting up our equipment to do when the setup guy opens the front door, it lets a little bit of air in, and then all of a sudden the drapes start to move. And when the drapes start to move, electricity, the available ambient electricity that's been stored in them is freed, and the phenomena uses this electricity to manifest. Hand on my shoulder, things along those nature. Came up to a house, the house we discussed before. There was a house, big house on the river in Cape Coral, and this house had been left there a while. A woman who owned it had died. All these different things, this and that. I was left the key and a little planter to go walk in and assess the situation because the family was so freaked out they wouldn't go back in the house. Okay, show up at night, get the key, find it, this, that, the other thing. I open up the door and I go walking in. In the foyer, I open up the door and I'm reaching for. There's a lamp right there, and I'm reaching for like the little twisty thing on the lamp, and the door's closed and it's pitch black, and something comes walking down the stairs. There's a big stairway that goes into the landing right there. You hear the feet. It comes walking right up to me, and it goes, "My problem." Just like that. So I'm like, whoa. So my answer was, wow, there is a ghost here. That kind of thing. I'm like, I'm like, do it again.
Normal people run out the door. Other people stay.
Yeah, exactly. Leave. But yes, that kind of stuff. So yes, houses that sit a while can have that happen. Sometimes grandma being a little batty and crazy, because it's always that story. Well, grandma was out of her mind and finally sold the house, and she always talked about these ghosts. But the truth is, she might have been experiencing it just like you. Yeah. And when you have those things happen, the way I look at it is, it's like clusters of 3. Like of course it can be 2, but when more than one strange occurrence occur in one area, for each multiplier, it makes it more likely, right?
Yeah.
1 time, 10 times, 20 times, it's going to be more likely at 20 than 1. So I think that what happens is that when you walk in and there's a sequence of things leading up to, and this is important, things that make you go, See that people ask, you could ask me, or I'll ask myself, what is the thing that makes me think a house is haunted? Things that make me go,
happen more than once.
Yeah, where I'm just like, that was just, all right, we're going to put that in the yes section, things that make you go, because some houses have there's no.
Sure. Yeah, that happened more than a few times for sure. When you talked about the Ouija board, it was funny because I remember a story when I was a kid. My friend said he had one.
Yeah.
And I said, can you ask it if this girl likes me? Because I had a crush on this girl.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, it never lies. I use it all the time. That's what he told me. It was kind of funny. But I said, can you ask this girl if she likes me? He never got back. He never told me.
Never found out.
I was like, let's see if this thing really works. But there's all these really cool things that happen. Another story, too, I had this client. He had this house on the wall. It looked like the Psycho house.
Yeah.
which is a small house, by the way.
Yeah.
Psycho House is only it looked like a mansion.
Yeah, but when you really saw it, it was
But it was
little,
like-
it was a
wasn't that
little
big.
right there in Bodega,
was tall.
outside of Bodega. Yeah.
So I looked at this picture and I said, cool looking house. It was like in Savannah.
Yeah.
I said, haunted? And he laughed. He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, really? He said, yeah, I wrote a book on it.
Okay.
I said, really? He goes, yeah, we're in an area where everything around us is old.
Okay. Yeah.
And where they take tours of all the homes that are
Yeah.
haunted.
Yeah.
And he said, he was telling me, he said, one time I was remodeling the house, and he said the doorbell was disconnected. And he goes, when I was in the house, I heard the doorbell ringing, and it was disconnected.
Right.
Wow. Crazy. But he said that when you remodel houses that old, you never want to take the roof off the house because that releases the spirits. Is that true?
People believe that.
Do you think that's...
I don't think so. I think that. I don't know if it has any. Excuse me. I don't know if it has anything to do with any particular piece of the house, but I do not know that disrupting the status quo, that disruption can definitely lead to a problem. What like that house where the guy came down the steps and said my problem. Turned out that that was actually a woman who had died there.
Wow.
She had committed suicide, and so it was stirring up the house. It was pulling down those drapes. It was letting that energy into the room. It was taking grandma's things and moving them, or selling them or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of story. You can also use the birdhouse as an example. When I moved to Florida, all I heard about was the birdhouse, and it was about this famously haunted house out in Alva, and so we heard about this and heard about that, and when I ended up finally getting a chance to see the birdhouse, I'm actually the only investigator who has. When I met with the owner and we went in there together and this and that, one thing that I'd noticed is that he had remodeled it and he had gutted the inside of the building so that it could be like new wall boards could go up and all these things. Beautiful restoration, beautiful. And it pulled out the ghost along with it. Whatever went out with the baby went with the bathwater, the whole thing, and it went and a lot of. Now, granted, there may be activity. What do I know? It's not my house. Maybe it's as active as it's ever been, but I know that a lot of places that used to be that got gutted. Perfect example, and there was a funeral home in Fort Myers that got gutted. Down to it used to have an embalming room and it used to have the viewing room. I saw a guy walk past me as plain as day, looking at you, and I looked around the corner. He wasn't there. And he went walking to some spare room. There was no exit door. And so, but it's been gutted. It ended up that they took it. They thought it would be more saleable, not as an old funeral home, but as a pole barn, big building. And it did, and it turned out to be a big office building. But
did you tell them? Did you realize what you did?
They knew. They knew.
Did you realize there's no more activity in this place?
They gutted it. Yeah, I remember that place was gutted. I went back there. It was probably 2 a.m, and we were coming from another investigation. I was talking to my case manager on the phone. We're in 2 different cars, and he said, I'm driving past the old funeral home. I said, I got a hankering to go inside. So I stopped and I went over there and I opened I opened it up and I went and I sat in this like bridge chair. In the pitch blackness, in the middle of what used to be the embalming room, by myself, let me see what I can find, and listening for footsteps because that place used to have a lot of choppy footsteps in the back, where I saw that guy walking, but it got gutted. I could tell it was gutted just sitting there. I mean, I had the normal heebie-jeebies that you get when you do those kind of things.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love that. Some of the famous places, right? Stanley Hotel. Room 217, the Amityville Horror, the Conjuring House. Have you ever been to some of these spots? I know you talked about you were at the Conjuring House, right? But how about like room 217? Have you ever been to the Stanley Hotel?
The Stanley. I've been to the Stanley Hotel.
Did you ever stay in that room?
No, my daughter was stayed in it. Well, I say adjacent, very very close to it, in the snow. Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, somewhat recently she went there to represent Ghost Pros and stuff, and she went with another investigator.
So she's into it too.
Oh yeah. And,
so she didn't stay there though, right?
She stayed there
in that room or no?
She didn't stay in that room.
Can you stay in that? You could stay in that room.
You can
right?
stay in any of the ones you want. Yeah, It's interesting. Stanley Hotel, of course, it's TV paranormal.
Yeah.
But
do you believe that story though? Because that's how Stephen King,
yeah.
I think, wrote the movie because of that room.
I think that there's maybe a thread of truth.
Yeah, a
I don't
sliver.
know, a sliver.
Yeah.
With every ghost story, there's a sliver. I'm thinking here about famous places that are haunted. A lot of them have been, incurred the wrath of paranormal decay, of wrath of time, because nothing stays the same. There are many places you can go to by yourself, where if you've got a hankering that something's going on, if you just got a feeling, for example, and I believe this is going to be my next book that I write. We have had so many experiences in motels that we're staying in while we're investigating bigger hotels. Like for the next, we'll show up a day early and stay in the motel or whatever it is. I can't tell you how many times myself and other team members have been in motels where something's like walking on by, with the bathroom and the sink are, those kind of things. Like, who the hell's walking in this place? I'd be like, hello, and everybody, it's like people, it's like a flop house. They're all sleeping all over. But
that's kind of interesting because the place you're going to investigate may not have as much activity as the place you're going to on the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Which
in
is
fact,
cool.
Yeah, these places just some of these motels. Oh, well, we were doing a thing on the Oviedo Lights, which is a spook light. I love spook lights. And it's up near, Oviedo is up near Orlando. So it's the little Econohatchee River. They call it the Little Econ. And they've been seeing this floating spook light come out of this thing for ages, right? So we were staying in it was like a Motel 6 or something, or something like that in Oviedo. And there was somebody walking around the place, and there were only two of us in the room, and there was somebody walking by and walking by and walking by and walking by. You can hear all this. So then, on the way out, one of the girls pushing one of those maid carts down, like changing the linens and stuff. This one girl, she was so sweet. I said, I got to tell you, this place is haunted as hell. And she says, oh, it is. And she says, you wouldn't believe how many things have happened to me. And then she said that a businessman, this is a correlation. She said there was a suicide, there were different things. Who's to tell if that had any cause or effect? But yeah, she said some of these rooms that they go in, you can tell somebody's in them.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why, and one of my theories is, I think that a lot of times people stay in hotels not just because it's happy vacation time. Sometimes they stay in a hotel because they have no other choice.
Yeah.
And this might not, we tend to think of staying in a hotel associating it with a fun trip or some business thing or something positive. But these people, it's negative. Like they're kicked out of the house, they lost their home, they got divorced, this and that. God knows what happened. And so for them, that negativity sloughs off of them and stays in the hotel.
Yeah.
Seems like
Yeah.
it. Does
How
seem
about
like
how about like mediums? Is there a medium in your group?
I am affiliated or associated. I have many psychic medium friends across the country.
Do you ever have to bring them in? No, you got most of that.
Yeah, I take a different approach.
Is there the setting like witchboard, right?
Yeah.
They're talking to the ghost. The thing flies over. The light
Yeah.
breaks. Explodes. Is there candles? Is there a setting when you have that type of scenario?
Well, what you mean? I'm big on seances.
So that's a thing.
Oh yeah, seances are the biggest. Kick
That's
in
the
the
scariest part of the movies. Typically,
Oh, yes.
is when the seance come and
Seances.
you're about to get scared.
Oh yeah, nothing kicks out the Scooby Doo like a seance. A good old fashioned. Now, I've been to some wacko seances. I've been to some table tippings you wouldn't believe. I've been to some things that are just where the freaking tables is flying around. Like, what is happening?
Do you put what does it look like? Is there candles around a table?
It can be, and this is what makes it so interesting. While in some ways, like a table tipping. Are you familiar with what that is?
Yeah.
So, some table tippings, most of them are somebody's in on it. You know, it's an experience rather than something to take to heart. Like they'll take their knee and they'll knock.
Yeah, jump the table. Yeah,
they
show
jump
me a sign.
Show me a sign. Yeah, they do all that stuff until
Yeah,
the
show
table
me.
starts moving. And now I've seen things like candles on tipping tables that ride out the whole tip. They'll ride out the whole tip when the table's going around. But generally, we don't. You know, I mean, there will be candles in the room, but usually they're on on the wall or something. But yeah. Seance, a good seance, good old-fashioned seance.
Nothing better than that for
Oh,
me.
no, not for me. I think it's a kick in the ass.
They got a cool story on one, not a seance, but so my background before real estate, I was in martial arts for a very long time. This isn't to talk about my
So was I.
martial arts skill. Were you really?
I had a dojo, yeah.
Did you?
So
what did you practice?
Jeet Kune Do.
Oh, nice. Well, Bruce Lee.
MMA, Jeet Kune Do. Yeah, same thing.
So
yeah.
you'll appreciate this because you'll know what I'm talking about. So the art that we practice is called Kung Tao.
Okay.
It was an Indonesian combat system, probably not the most positive system, you know?
You never know.
More on offense than defense,
But
whatever.
you know what? You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. I did that for probably 20 years. And the 1-inch punch from Bruce Lee, part of it was a little bit of our system, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if you light a candle, and the goal was to develop enough chi
Right.
to pop the candle
Bring your
out.
chi up.
To pop the candle
pop
out.
it, yes.
And the better you got with it by doing Tai Chi and Qigong and all these different things, the better chance you could have of popping a candle out. I got the chills thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I got pretty good at one point. I could punch a candle out, you know, with no problem.
Right.
You know, this way or this way, you know, whatever way you're going to do it, right? So I remember my instructor died, Lenny Howie. Lenny died probably 25 years ago. I lit a candle in my room, and there'd be a dilation thing we do. We stare at the candle, and everything kind of comes in.
Absolutely.
So, and at the end of that, you would 1-inch punch out the candle.
Right.
Right. So I remember I was staring at the candle. This is right after he died, and the candle popped out by itself.
Yeah.
Swear to God, I'm not
Yeah.
making this up. There's, you know, it isn't like you could just make a candle pop out. You could push a candle out by wind, but when a candle pops out, it's different, right?
Yes.
It pops out.
Yes. Yeah.
Scared as hell. Turn the lights on. I'm probably 20 years old at this time.
Right.
Turn the lights on. Freaked out. You know, like
Right.
probably put a cartoon on TV
Sure,
to try to
of course.
lessen the mood. So then, check this out. Now there's a seminar coming up in like 2 weeks.
Okay.
I get this vivid dream that Lenny, my teacher, is in my dream. And he says to me, don't wear those shirts. The Grand Master's name is spelled incorrectly on the shirts. We had all these shirts printed for the seminar. Not making this shit up.
Yeah.
We all wear our shirts, like 9 students to go see the Grand Master that taught my teacher.
Yeah.
We walked in. As soon as we walked in, he said, those shirts, disgrace to the family, it's spelled wrong on the shirts.
Yeah.
And I had a dream
Yes.
that he came to me and said, don't wear those shirts.
Yeah.
So, you know, people could believe what they want to when these sort of things happen, right? If you see some of those signs and believe them, you believe it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Other people may say, you know, it just happens. It's just, you know, it's
No, it doesn't.
It was in your head. You knew it, and you just
Yeah.
whatever. But kind of a crazy story.
Oh yeah, I mean well, you know, martial arts, as you know, as you and I can relate, it's very spiritual. You know, there's a transference of energy. There's all these things that happen, and when you start getting into something where there's trust and there's honor and there's this and there's that and all these things are interwoven, it brings in an energy that's ordinarily not around.
Yeah.
You know, so whereas, you know, and that's the whole thing is along the journey, like while I got my black belt at first, it was a journey into who I was to become.
Yeah.
And then you're touching on more of an ethereal spirit type of thing, or even like you said, bringing your chi up. Like I used to train with a Shaolin guy, and it would be Saturday morning in our dojo, and he would always do this thing where he stood there and he'd hold his hands on his knees like this, and he'd move his knees around, and he'd be squatted down and doing this. And I'd say, his name was Rick, and I'd say, Rick, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm bringing my chi up. You know, that kind of thing. And he'd do these snapping moves where, like, the snap, you know, you hear snap. And you know the pop, right?
Yeah.
He'd pop, and he'd do, you know, all of these different things. He'd come down, and he'd pop, all these kind of things. And fascinating because he had, it's the realm, whatever it might be. I mean, maybe they're just tapped into the outskirts of it.
Yeah. And it's such a cool thing because I remember a chi ball, right? That was the first thing I learned was to try to develop a ball of chi, right? To where it actually feels like a basketball.
Yeah.
It becomes hot in your hands and then you get pretty good at that. And then you can almost develop that by a few breaths.
Yeah.
The better you can get, the quicker you can bring it on, right? And it was really cool because at that time I really believed so much in that. And I still do, but at the time I was so big into that whole Chinese medicine, the whole Tai Chi. After you did Tai Chi, you always wipe your body off, pulling in any negative energy
yourself,
and things.
all that, yeah.
But it was pretty cool. I mean, I lived it. It was a fun time for sure.
Oh, it's great. I mean, all of those things. I loved that more than the combat itself. I mean, I've always been a rough and tumble action guy, a professional whitewater instructor and guide and all these things. I've done some really crazy stuff, racing all sorts of jet skis and things. But I fighting, it's just to have to summon up what it took to deal with somebody that would have an attitude or, I found that like when Rick would come by on Saturday and just Rick only, when we would do the mellow part of bringing your chi up, I would much rather spend the morning learning how to bring my chi up than having to beat on some guy.
That's right.
Because and even that was all part. And then, of course, people had things they had to prove, and then they'd show up wanting to spar, and I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, but you got the look, though. You don't really need to fight. You fight ghosts.
Fight ghosts. That's it. Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
It's fun, But yeah, I think these things are all torn together. In my book is a chapter called Him.
Okay.
Him is 3 chapters in one. If you've not read it yet, please do. Him, and it doesn't have to be read in sequence. They're all individual stand-on stories that are tied together by a common thread. But Him is about a lot of the things we're talking about. It's about that guy on that guy standing by the roadside looking at you, and you're just kind of wondering like who is this person? You know he's looking at you, and then next thing he's gone. And if you think about, like my dad always used to tell me that he learned in Korea that he said to me, when you find yourself in a position where danger might be afoot, like you might be taking a step or two closer to the flame than you want to. My dad said, and I couldn't believe he told me this, because he wasn't the kind of guy who talked about these things. He said, sometimes you'll see someone just for a second, and then it'll vanish. And I go, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I don't really know how to say it. He says, you'll just see somebody. And that seeing that somebody will tell you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he talked to me about things that would happen to guys, loading howitzers and having breaches blow up and all these different kinds of things. And we would talk about how people would see this thing. And he said the difference between whether people lived or died is whether or not they kind of heeded the warning, that kind of thing. And so he talked about that. And once I started realizing that there was some credence to what he was saying, I think it saved my ass a couple of times. And that's why I think the whole paranormal realm, it's not just about ghosts, it's about other things that happen, but we're so darn busy driving down the street that we don't take the time to look to the side to see who's looking at us.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I think that the more you learn about your surroundings and your place in it all, or how you interact with it too, where you can actually alter the outcome of your life,
That makes a lot of sense to me. And it's actually really kind of a good final thought for the show. Because, if you're aware of everything around you, like and what you do, right? You're aware of all you're always looking, analyzing things. That's huge because a lot of people don't do that. They don't take the time to look around.
No.
They're too focused on getting things done, and then they're 85 years old. Then they start to look around and realize, man, I wasted a lot of time. Not looking out in the world and seeing what's out there and just being aware of your surroundings, really.
Yeah, the people are they don't. The reason they don't appreciate and experience things like I would or you would or other people with like ideas or values in some ways is because they don't take the time to look over the hedge. What's over there? You know, they don't go there because nobody goes there.
Yeah.
Or they don't look for this because nobody looks for this. Doesn't mean that these things aren't out there. And I think that because the realm of the unexplained is so vast, it gives you 1,000,001 interesting things to study and enjoy.
Yeah.
And also it can be there's life-saving examples that are given to us. You like the hymn thing. Well, you'll be reading it. There's a point out in the desert 100 miles from nowhere where you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And sometimes, something will come up to you like right in your face. And, and some people, and I'll see it happen to people and just keep on going. Like in high school, when we were all wild and crazy, and we were, wasn't there always that time where you step back and you watch that one guy and he's gonna go off the rope swing that nobody ever goes off of?
Yeah.
And you just know that somebody's going to end up breaking something or worse. And you just have to or they're going to, we're just going to light a small fire. It's not going to get too big.
Yeah.
It's time to leave. And
Always be aware. Yeah.
Always
be a skeptic of those types of things because you can get hurt.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Lee, what would be, some words from the wise, somebody that wants to get into this career? Kind of give me some of your thoughts on that.
I think that if you feel drawn to it, you're already halfway there, because there's something about all of this that appeals to people worthy of, just like with martial arts, are you worthy of the mindset? Are you worthy of, I think what they should do is, don't believe everything you hear. Draw your own conclusions based upon common sense, because common sense is the key. You got to have it in there. As exciting as it is, a little bit of common sense might change it a little bit, but don't be dissuaded. It's not, discovering that something isn't a ghost is as important as discovering that it is a ghost, because you're honing your skill sets and you're learning what isn't and you're learning what is, and you're learning that when follow your instincts and think about what you felt and saw and smelled and tasted when that thing happened. Add it to your repertoire of knowledge and know that if I walk into a place and my hair stands on end, there could be a number of reasons, but it might mean, something's around.
Yeah.
Those kind of, or something, don't be a little bit more open, and also too, lastly, the more open you are, the more they'll come to you. If you're the kind of person who is so standoffish that nobody wants to have anything to do with you, including the ghosts, that kind of thing. If you're open, they have a tendency to be like, this person's kind of cool.
Yeah. Even the ghosts don't like you.
They
That's
don't like you, right?
Out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, be nice. Be nice, and that's the best thing to do. And trust your gut, and don't believe everything you're told.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I think the final thoughts today, really for the viewers and for our conversation, is that this is a fun campfire story with a guy that does this for a career, which could shed some light on some of the things that we might see, believe, and just being open to the things that are out there. Really.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be a good time, Halloween special, to get an expert in here. And
thanks.
You're a busy guy, and I appreciate this. And it's been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot. Yeah, it's been really great. We can talk for hours.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we will. And I just think that there's nothing better than the excitement of the unknown, and don't be afraid to get out there. Don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to take part in something.
Yeah.
That's it. And then you'll look back on it years later and go, God, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah. Sure.
And the people you meet along the way are much cooler than some of the folks you may have met. Not all of them, but some of them, because they're so open and they're so, they're just so unusually just nice.
Yeah.
Because they're on the same track as you.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's one of the things I felt like from today, and that's kind of my final thoughts really was people get so laser focused on getting jobs done, right? Versus maybe being more open. And when you're doing things, acknowledging people, places, where you're at.
Right.
Being not only there in person, but being there, enjoying what you're doing.
Right.
Like when I go out and I meet a client, and as I'm walking up, even if I'm in a hurry, I might recognize a few people. I just give them a quick point. Hey, what's up? Lee, good to see you, man. Hey, I'm meeting somebody. I'm tied up. Good to see you. You always want to be aware of your surroundings. And having kids, 15, 13, and 10, I always tell them, just always be aware of what's going on. Whether you're walking, driving, going to school, always, I don't want you to be a skeptic, but one of the things in martial arts that you could respect as well is always analyzing the room. No matter where you're at, and teaching the kids to just be better with that. And I think everybody should do that. Just always be aware of your surroundings and take the extra step to say hey to a friend.
Be there. It's so important. As a parent myself, I tell my daughter, you got to be aware of what's going on around you. So many people are unaware. I can't believe it's like they'll walk off a cliff, that kind of thing. And it's all interrelated. And also too, the more involved you get in branching out and appreciating what's around us, the more it will give you.
Yeah, that's right.
You'll become immersed in this mindset of appreciation.
That's right.
And then follow that line. If you're psychic, if you have visions, if you have a feeling, if you get a gut feeling, maybe there's a cold case with the police that you're interested in joining in on. Maybe that's my thing, and maybe there's something that you want to do. Do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it.
They made a thing after that, right? Just do it.
That's it.
Nike.
Yeah. Nike. There you go. It's all about ghost hunting. Yeah.
Lee, tell the listeners and viewers where they can find you, where they can find the book. Just give them a little information.
Well, since I wear many hats, the easiest way to get to me is just basically through my Facebook page. It's just Lee Ehrlich. It's EHRLICH. It's a mixture of everything from what I do with the Coast Guard and our life-saving stuff that we do every day to ghosts and goblins and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. So just look me up on Facebook. It's the best way. Also too, you can get my book. It's on Amazon. It's Master of the Abyss. Master of the Abyss: A Journey into the Unknown. There's a couple of other Master of the Abysses so make sure one of them's a heaving bosom novel. It's like one of those Fabio books. So make sure you order the right one. But Master of the Abyss: A Journey into the Unknown. That's important. Great stories, all true, creepy as hell, and And
it's great font too, by the way.
Thanks.
I like the font. It's got a creepy little vibe to it.
It does. Yeah, but you can get a hold of me through that. You can always message me on Facebook if you got a haunting, whatever it is. There's I always monitor my social media, so that's the best way to go.
Now that I know Lee, if I could have had you back with me 15 years ago, I could have had you come look at that house with me.
Could have.
Tell me if it was real.
I'll tell you. Yeah, we'll have to go to that sometimes. Some places that aren't.
I'm scared, but not really. Thank you for watching and listening to the show. Again, I want to thank my sponsors, Above and Beyond Painting, First Source Title, Edwards Contracting Group, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It's a fun little campfire Halloween episode.
Fun, thank you.
Rise up, king. I'd rather build or destroy.